Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn and today we're gonna have a little bit of fun talking trash about plants that have fallen from grace. Now, it's no secret that in general, the plant market, like most other markets, fluctuates, and that means that the prices of certain plants at certain levels of quality may go up and it may go down. But I feel like I have a little list of 5 where the actual change over time in price was just brutal. Like, I'm talking about plants that went from being highly coveted and really pricey and easy to make a quick buck on if you could propagate them, to just being widely available and in some cases just like not even desirable at all anyway. So let's get into it. These are the top 5 plants that have fallen from grace over the past couple of years. All right, coming in at number 5, we have velvet heart philodendrons. Now, velvet heart philodendrons are gorgeous and they're still super popular. It's just that they're nowhere near as expensive and in like maniacal demand as they used to be. I think that's partially because while they are pretty easy to propagate, a lot of them are not super easy to care for and to bring up to maturity. And with how easy they are to propagate, the market was pretty flooded with them once they kind of took off as a trend. And as a result, everybody who really wanted to get all of them had that opportunity and kind of has them now. Now, that's not to say that they're not, you know, super fun to grow and super popular. And it is really fun, in my opinion, to kind of work on a challenge. But for the most part, you definitely are not going to see juvenile or small cuttings of velvet leaf philodendrons going in the hundreds of dollars like we used to see. There are still a few that hold their value like pretty well. I would say that the Philodendron glorious is one of those that tends to be a little bit pricier than some of the others, but your melanochrysums, your verrucosums, your Philodendron El Chaco red and whatnot have come down significantly in price from where they were going a couple of years ago. Philodendron El Chaco red in particular was like the plant of 2020. And when that plant first hit like the mainstream houseplant consciousness, they were going for $600 for a cutting easily. And they're nowhere near that much now. I mean, if you're paying $600 for a Philodendron El Chaco red, you're getting a big mature plant. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more entry level, you can probably find a juvenile one or a chunk or a cutting for in the $100 range. It's definitely doable if you wait for the right plant and you ask around. I personally absolutely love and adore heart-leafed velvet philodendrons. They're some of my favorites. I have pretty much every variety that you can think of. And of course, there are some exceptions to this, specific cultivars of verrucosum that people are unfamiliar with. Mature versions of the plants still go for quite a lot, but yeah, definitely fell from grace and not fetching the prices that they used to a couple of years ago. Next on the list, coming in at number 4, we have the forever problem child Philodendron pink princess. Now, back a couple of years ago, right when the houseplant boom took off, Philodendron pink princess was one of those Instagram plants that just absolutely shot off like a rocket. There's anecdotal accounts of prior to the houseplant boom in, you know, the mid 2010s, these plants being sold in nurseries for like $6 a pot and nobody wanted them. Flash forward to the end of the decade and they are the it plant, and absolutely incredible specimens of these plants are racking up thousands and thousands of likes on Instagram. And I can completely see why everybody wanted it. You know, if you hadn't really been around plants and in the community for very long, it is kind of mind-blowing that a plant can look like this. However, these kind of lost their luster pretty quickly. And why is that? Well, this is why. This is why. The reason is that pink princesses are actually really difficult to keep variegated. This plant, when I bought it, had 2 gorgeous sectoral pink variegated leaves that unfortunately have perished, and now the plant is only giving me tiny little specks of pink here and there. So they are very difficult to keep variegated, and the specimens that consistently give you leaves that look like this or this are really, really rare, and they're still expensive. However, the market did kind of get really oversaturated with really, really low quality pink princesses, partly from tissue culture, and it seems like there was probably a mutation in the tissue culture process that actually changed the way that the leaves kind of looked, and the tissue culture pink princesses don't quite look exactly the same as the original hybrid where the cultivar originated. Even on a plant like this that has, you know, given me a number of pink leaves, there was a good stretch of time where I got like nothing. Just green leaves, green leaves, green leaves. And in addition to pushing lots of fully green leaves, pink princesses are also notorious for pushing fully pink leaves that aren't viable, and the plant just ends up dying. And I think a lot of people spent a lot of money on reverted nodes and reverted mid cuttings, or even on like fully established plants with beautiful variegation, only to have them revert. And a lot of people never really got what they wanted with pink princesses, and the plants just ended up kind of being a little bit too difficult to keep happy. So the price on them has fallen significantly. I remember back in 2020 when these plants were really just like all the rage. Nice pink princess, a decent sized plant with nice variegation on a pink princess, you could easily get up into the high triple digits, like depending on, you know, like where it was being sold and who the seller was. And even plants that had like iffier variegation, you know, light variegation, like I feel like cuttings from this plant would have gone for a couple $100s back then. I don't think that would be the case now. And, you know, even reverted pink princess cuttings were going in the triple digits back at the peak. That's absolutely not the case anymore. I see reverted pink princess nodes and reverted pink princess cuttings basically not selling for even as little as like $15, $20 in Facebook groups these days. So the plant has definitely fallen from grace. We are probably never going to see those sky high pink princess prices again, because not only has the demand kind of fallen off for it, but so many people have them that if at any point they kind of become an it thing again, the market will be flooded very, very quickly. So that is kind of the story on the pink princess. Very cool plants if you can get them growing right, but in the end, their moment has passed. All right, so next on the list is actually one I don't have handy because I don't do begonias, but that would be the Begonia Darthvaderiana. Now, a couple of years ago, the Begonia Darthvaderiana was the absolute be all end all it begonia. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the begonia is almost entirely black, and black plants, plant goth plants, always make a splash when they're first introduced. And also, whoever came up with the name Darthvaderiana was very smart and could not have picked a better name to market this plant under, a black begonia called Darthvaderiana. And they were very expensive when they first hit the scene, and they were very, very hard to get because they're one of the most difficult begonias to keep. And like begonias have a bit of a reputation for being difficult, but apparently the Darthvaderiana is like a next level species to attempt, even if you are an experienced begonia handler. There's many nightmare stories of the plant just like melting, and like they don't recommend that you even touch it with your bare hands. So the plant was very, very beautiful, very coveted, and it was considered to be quite a bit of a flex if you could keep the plant alive. However, the high prices on that didn't last very long because it actually turns out that botanicas started to put them out for, you know, under $100. And I'm not sure if botanicas is the first place to do this, when the price first started to drop. But I remember when I saw the Darthvaderiana from botanicas for like $79 or something, having always thought previously that they were a super rare, super expensive plant, I was shocked. I don't know exactly how much they were going for back then, but I just, you know, hearsay of people who bought them that, yeah, they paid a pretty penny for those Darthvaderianas back in the day. So definitely not going for those sky high prices anymore. anymore. And they've also kind of fallen out of popularity. Like I almost never see anyone talk about them anymore. And I think it's because they're just so difficult to keep happy. There are some Darthvaderiana hybrids that apparently look almost exactly like the original plant, but are much hardier. And so I think people have probably moved on to those. But yeah, Begonia Darthvaderiana had its moment in the sun and it is done. All right, so coming in at number 2 is the Philodendron Devansayanum, aka Philodendron Lynamii. And this plant is really interesting. It has a fascinating history. I have a whole video on it. You should definitely go check that out if you want to hear the story. But long story short, this plant was brought back from South America in the 1980s and named Philodendron Lynamii. And then it turns out the plant had already been discovered and collected and taken back to Europe like 100 years previously. You know, they thought it was like super rare, and they only had it in one collection. That the guy's name was Ralph Lynam, and that's who the plant was named after before they figured out that it probably had already been discovered and named like 100 years previously. So the plant has really cool history, and it used to be extremely rare. It was purported to be second only to the Spiritus Sancti in rarity. And there was actually like a brief moment in time earlier in 2021 when Philodendron Lynamii actually might have been rarer than the Spiritus Sancti, because at that time there had already been a lot of interest in tissue culturing the Spiritus Sancti and bringing it to market before the Philodendron Lynamii like really hit the mainstream plant consciousness. And back then, very few people had it. Well, back then, these plants were going in the mid quadruple digits. $4,000, $5,000 for a Philodendron Lynamii was totally normal, if you could even find one. And you know, a plant like this that has like tons of leaves on it, like I don't even know what this would have gone for back then. But as it turns out, I know exactly what happened here because Ivan told me. So for those of you who don't know, Ivan Portilla, he's like the vice president over at Aquagenera. You've probably met him if you've ever gone to one of their pop-ups. He's like just super nice guy, super passionate. And I actually asked him about the Philodendron Lynamii because last year Aquagenera started offering them out of the blue, and a lot of people were really concerned that it wasn't actually really a Lynamii, it was an affinis. And what he told me is that what happened was that they had this huge mother plant, like a 20-year-old mother plant on their land in Ecuador that they had always just assumed was a Nigritens until I think it bloomed. And then they looked at it more closely and they realized like, no, this is not a Nigritens, like this is a Lynamii. And it turned out it was really easy for them to pollinate, and they had a lot of success with growing up the seedlings. So that is the main reason why all of a sudden Philodendron Lynamii is much more widely available. As recently as the last couple of months, I've seen them on sale on the Aquagenera website for way less than, you know, quadruple digits. Getting one that is fully rooted and acclimated in the United States is still probably going to run you a couple $100s just because, you know, there's a lot of risk and it's expensive to import plants, but they've really come down in price since Aquagenera has been able to churn out seedlings. And there's actually been some controversy that the Ecuadorian versions that Aquagenera is selling are somehow different than the Peruvian version. I will tell you that I think that it's just people trying to find a way to keep the prices up and keep the prestige up on Philodendron Lynamii. People say that the Ecuadorian version like doesn't have as brilliant of pink leaves, and actually I think what's happening is just that like in order for you to get the brilliant pink leaves, you have to keep the plant in really high humidity. Otherwise the leaf doesn't unfurl fast enough for the like really bright pink to show through. So Philodendron Lynamii fell from grace, went from being basically a plant unicorn myth to you can definitely find one if you want one, if you're willing to spend a couple $100s or maybe a little more depending on, you know, how big of a plant you want. I think that they're super cool. They're really easy plants to grow, much less temperamental than, you know, the velvet leafed philodendrons, and they put put on a fun show when they push out leaves. Keep them in super high humidity, you'll get more of that pink. I also really like that they are a crawler, so I think they're easier to deal with than like a climbing philodendron. But yeah, this is actually one of the plants that I'm kind of glad that it is more available, because this is a good beginner plant. Like they're fun and they're easy, they're not temperamental, and they're just grateful for every opportunity that you give them. So Philodendron Lynamii had a little bit of a fall from grace, but I actually think that that is a good thing in the end for everybody else out there who wants to enjoy this plant. I highly recommend them. All right, so last up we have, and this is probably like the swiftest, most straight down like fall from grace of any plant at least I'm aware of, and that's the Monstera Obliqua. So I don't have a Monstera Obliqua handy, but we all know the history on this plant. Hashtag it's never Obliqua. Up until a couple of years ago, Monstera Obliqua was basically like a myth. Only a very, very small number of people had the plant. It was all held in private collections, or maybe a few botanical gardens that had them where you could see them on display, but the plant was very tightly held onto. It was something that if you were a Monstera collector, it was like the holy grail of Monstera. There were so few of them available that there was just basically no way you were ever going to get your hands on it. And when they did come up for sale, they were thousands of dollars. I would see them go for like $2,500, $3,000 for like a small plant, like back before they really started getting out there. And then I do remember like the actual like zenith of the Monstera Obliqua like pricing before the bottom of the market kind of fell out on Monstera Obliqua was Jimmy from Legends of Monstera did like a whole video about this plant because it sold at auction for like $26,000. I think it might have been at the beginning of 2021. I'll try and find the video and link it below. I'll actually like try and link a whole bunch of videos on these different things below. $26,000 for like a big Monstera Obliqua mother plant. And I remember when that sold thinking like, there goes the price on that. Because like you don't pay $26,000 for a giant mother plant and then like not cut it up and sell it. And sure enough, over time, the plant started like creeping out here and there, and you started seeing the prices kind of slowly go down, and you'd see like $800 for a node and, you know, $1,200 for a one leaf cutting, and they kind of slowly creep down as the market kind of got saturated. And now in early 2022, so like a year later, you can get a Monstera Obliqua runner node. Keep in mind, that's not like a guarantee of a plant, but it's like a chance to have a Monstera Obliqua for like $120 in some groups. Probably less than that if you live somewhere and you know someone that just has a ton of them. A friend of mine traded like 6 months ago a Mills bow and $200 for an Obliqua. Like that's crazy, like how much the prices really come down. They're still really, really cool plants, and they're also, you know, not like the easiest. Like they do need a lot of humidity, and you do have to be like committed to giving them the conditions they need to get them to grow. But if you want a Monstera Obliqua, you can get one like easily now. And it's very easy to make sure that what you're getting really is an Obliqua and it's not just an Adansonii. Like back in the day, there were so many stories from people who were like, yeah, I paid like all this money and was told I was getting an Obliqua, and it turns out it was just a narrow form Monstera Adansonii, and I'm devastated. And that happened to a lot of people. So I think it's great that it's now so easy to get one that you can verify is authentic, that's you're not getting scammed. And, you know, they still go for a little bit of money. They still go into like, you know, a couple $100 for a plant, but nowhere near the thousands of dollars that they were going for before. And it's just, it like fell out so quickly. It's nuts. So that is my number one plant that has fallen from grace, the Monstera Obliqua. If you have any more, you know, plants that you think of completely tanked in the market, leave them down below. It'll be fun to chat about it. That is gonna be it from me for today. Thank you so much for chilling with me, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.